Hi, camera. Slay. And I'm gonna be late to training anyway.
Good.
So everything just does in this class that are it's just like $600 or $800 million. I mean, like a presentation. That because real money is
Because my psychic is almost done. Yeah, I feel like it's the same.
I'll show you on I'll show you right now.
I don't want to see mine. I have one assignment here today. And also, my canvas last semester was like that.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, the one
I was being last sometimes. My canvas used to be like 1, 2, 3, 0, 0, 4. And I was like almost doing it. Now it's like, and that was great. It's just because my psychic
It's still
is more I might end up doing I don't think so. I might have doing I was figuring out before it's like plain C is if I get more accounting or grad school and do my psychology stuff. And then I'll be like 10 more years. I don't want to.
No, me too. Yeah, so and it's funny because one of my favorite topics probably 9 and like, one of the things that really shows me like how much should give them how they two. All that was like literally before like music covers, groups and one of them there was a group that actually does like it's actually fine, right? And they were great. That's something about how we don't volunteer.
Just so like, that makes sense. I realized that.
Every dollar where it goes. She's
So, block or
I don't need to be paying the taxes on my savings. But like I already paid yeah, just in the past, there was like 3 guys who worked like over something. And then there's like 2 trucks, and then they're like looking for another one. One of them was yeah. Well, his their presentation, he didn't tell us someone didn't have an actual presentation put together. He had kind of like reading all our isn't working yet, and like we're actually we're making progress, and then he's like actually we're running trucks
like everything.
Meanwhile, his team member are pulling chicken out of the recycling. But yeah, they were actually and then either a dollar this year was just an add-on. But he was talking about how they spent 40K on the truck and then
like, there's a link.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, can it just sort of.
I like the black.
I get it from flyers and getting boxed in so much place. How about we just work on the for underneath this, the biggest thing that you can see sucks to say, and just and that it was taking so much time. Then he said, but my biggest school was that money was and just refund the lecture and say that doesn't actually something you want to do.
But she didn't do it.
Yeah, I'll probably just leave. Just look for it. At least for the
I am excited to deliver it. Do you remember how when you went with it, some teacher and delivery was Friday?
Yeah, it was.
Did you go like an hour?
It was like.
Yeah. Did you go the next day? You did. You went into Saturday.
I'm just so.
When it was really
Yeah, because our like we have deliberations from I don't know 1 to Friday, and then there's an optional additional session Saturday. That's when I get bored.
You know, I gave myself those.
Yeah, I thought they were doing February. Okay, cool. I was just checking grades. I would Anywhere else to get out $500 for all.
Graduated.
Oh, excellent. I mean, that tracks. It doesn't take long the process. You're just saving your own time. Who's doing the application process?
Yeah.
I did line block and VLF last year. I don't like it. That's how we ended up with.
I do think she had to go hard. Like, she definitely.
I'm still mad about that year.
No, I would.
No, she definitely.
Was that? Yes. There.
I missed it. All of that.
Oh,
Yeah, there's pretty much flat, there's a little bit of a decrease. He's like,
Wait, where, what's the?
but she just runs down. Which is really nice.
If I don't get it, I guess. But what do you think you?
So she had her on visa or?
Yeah.
And then
I think I thought I was going to your position. Go to Boston for a conference.
A lot of moving parts.
In terms of money control, it goes you on development. Yeah, putting
In
I
Milan.
have no
I'm not putting.
I told my friends.
Because I think much of it.
It's always I didn't read that. It's going. You go back to spinning and be on the line.
Where's that fucking brought you?
We were sitting at finance last week. You had your finance. Yeah, and I went, yes. Yeah, that's
I'm staying tuned for next year. Hopefully, I get a place to
It is, yeah, but after 4 years,
I want to have one.
I just want to be back. Just sitting back and watch. Oh, okay. I want to insert myself.
I could be a student senator because they don't do it.
So, yeah, like, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'd have to, you know, I can't stand I'll just put my phone number on the front of the Constitution. Yes, hopefully. I still have some, about 4 months.
How did you just get?
ballpark. I can look up how many hours I've spent with the document. Total editing time, 13,891 minutes, which is 231 hours.
Oh, that was
I came up with a new numbering structure and it has automatic. Here, everything's now numbered by article, or title, article, section. All that was handwritten by Tom. 10 times.
I don't know if I heard that. I heard that last year.
December.
Wait, was that her? No, 18.
We're also doing the most government thing possible. We have to build a create a committee to review the revision.
I'm so glad I did. Everything was so
I sense sarcasm.
I'm the chair. What? I'm the chair.
Yep.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. I'm not in here. I need to sign that with my schedule, otherwise I might end up having to.
That's fine. I'm okay. I don't know. Why should I be here more? And then we got it.
No, she's not. No, she's not. It's not such a movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
I think like he's decided to be the best.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't go over there.
Wow. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes. No, he's in Kansas City now.
Oh.
He works for. And then he's an advisor to the.
I definitely.
I know. No, she got a master's and. Oh. I never. Okay. She was working her way out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I think I might. Why do you think I'm not?
Why? You wanna know why? I'm serious. No, because I've never heard of
At the junior year, I was like.
I'm just saying, I said.
Are you guys?
You're not making.
And I was like.
What's your opinion?
They were like,
Actually, Megan has a whole plan, so I'm gonna let Megan do her plan and not mess with it.
Okay.
Oh no, it's
So it's still going, yes. Adam's our Hilltop presenter.
Awesome. I'm Megan Stoffren.
Hi.
Sorry.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I got here a little early.
All good.
Got a message saying you guys were ready. But
Yes. Our last presentation we had scheduled for an hour and they did not take more than 30 minutes.
I was gonna say I got about 15 minutes for you,
Awesome.
unless you guys have questions. But do I need to connect mine, or is it just up here?
We have it up here. There we go.
It'll be
Oh, okay.
The fee review one,
That's what I couldn't find.
and then files.
Yeah.
And then we'll find the name of the. Yeah. Perfect.
There it is.
Matea, do you know if we're missing anyone that was like, has anyone recently left the room that you noticed? Okay. Yeah.
I would not. I've run with like 3 campaigns and I barely do
I only heard part of that. I was invested in the conversation. All right, everybody, we're going to get started here a little bit early since we are running ahead of schedule. We have Hilltop Child Development Center, and then that clicker works if you want to use it.
There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me? My name is Adam Brown. I am the finance director at Hilltop Child Development Center. We currently are searching for a new executive director. So I haven't done this in a while. So bear with me. So I will start out with just sort of a quick overview of Hilltop. Are you guys familiar with Hilltop? Somewhat. It was founded in 1972 with a big assist from Student Senate. They donated or allocated $20,000 to open 3 classrooms in the old Wesley building. I don't even think that building's there anymore. But it had 3 classrooms, housed 50 children. By the late 80s, early 90s, they needed to grow. Demand was high. In 94, Student Senate put a $2 fee in effect. And by 97, they doubled that because we were kind of having some issues with the university. This is all before my time, so I don't know if this is, it is in Hilltop's history, but, I wasn't there for any of this. But so Student Senate agreed to double the semester fee to help us finish the building. And in 2000, Hilltop completed construction on the new building. It had 12 classrooms, 220 students. It was a big need for the university. And the demand just kept growing. 2008, we did a add-on to the building, 6 more classrooms, got our capacity up to 312 students. And then recently, we just opened a new building over on West Campus that has 10 new classrooms. And the big thing with that one is that it has infant care, which is very hard to find in Lawrence if you have infants. So we have 20 infant spots in the new building and 138 overall. So now Hilltop, our capacity is 450 children between the two facilities. So this just sort of shows Hilltop's impact on KU students. And by KU students, we mean like KU student employees, KU student families. So year over year, it increases. And especially with this new building, we're going to have a lot more opportunities to help out KU students. So we're hoping by the fall of 2025, we'll have well over 200 students that we are impacting, supporting through Hilltop. And that includes student employees, part-time employees. Hilltop is also a practicum site for a lot of early education majors, special education, music therapy, clinical child psychology. They do a lot of their research and a lot of their training on site at Hilltop. So Hilltop's tuition is based on a sliding scale. So we have a community rate, and then we have a KU student rate. And the student rate, if they qualify for the student rate, you have to be a KU student, you have to be in 6 credit hours, and you have to meet some income guidelines. But that discount saves KU students between $350 to $400 a month on childcare. So that's, we're really proud to be able to provide that. We also have a partnership with the CEOP, Center for Educational Opportunity Programs. They provide a C Campus grant to qualifying families. C Campus, bear with me here. It is Child Care Allows Parents in Schools, is what that stands for. So for the last 2 years, it has covered 100% of KU students who qualify. It's covered 100% of their tuition. They pay $0 for childcare, which in some cases can be almost $1,000 a month in savings. So that's a year-to-year thing. We fully expect it to go through until next year. But as of right now, we have 28 families that currently don't pay any tuition. They're all KU student families. They don't pay any tuition at Hilltop. It also provides the C Campus grant, provides workshops for families and just things like that for new families that are still, trying to figure out the whole parenting thing. This is our budget for the 24-25 fiscal year. You can see, I know that's a lot of stuff up there. If you look at the bottom line here, you can see we're expecting about a little under 5 million in revenue this year. And our expenses are going to be about 5.3 million this year. By this year, I mean through the summer of 2025. And a lot of that has to do with the new building we opened on West Campus. We are fully expecting to be operating at a loss for the next 5 years. We do have a reserve built up to absorb some of those losses. But with the new building, we haven't started paying, the loan was through KU Endowment. We haven't started paying KU Endowment back yet, but that's going to start in the next month or two. And that's going to be, I don't know if you guys can see it on here, that I have it on, bank charges and interest. We're going to be paying about $300,000 a year on interest alone on that loan for the new building. But it's a 10-year loan, and we're going to lose money for the next 3, 4, 5 years. But by the end of it, once we have it paid off after 10, we expect in year 6, 7, 8, those payments are going to go down, and we'll be back to making money. But the next few years, we'll be operating at a loss for sure. Anybody have any questions or anything? Yep. Yeah.
Could you walk us through some of these expense items?
Sure. Any in particular? Or?
Comp insurance.
That's our workers' comp insurance. We have a lot of teachers who, they're out on the playgrounds with the kids. They go on walks. They twist their ankles. We've had a broken wrist. It covers our employees when they're, playing with the kids and something happens. Yeah. And that part-time wages of 939,000, as of last year, I don't know if I've looked at it this year, that's about 70% KU students is that. That's usually people, a lot of them, I don't have a number, but I'd say 60% are probably early education majors, or it's the field they want to go into. And Hilltop's a great starting place for that, and they get a decent wage while they're doing it. Any other questions on the revenue or expenses? Yeah.
Just checking the staff development / appreciation. That's like bonuses, right?
No.
No?
The bonuses are included in the salaries and the wages and the payroll. The staff development, it says on there staff development and appreciation. The staff appreciation is about $7,000. The staff development's about $25,000. So we send our full-time teachers probably between 5 and 10 every year. They'll go to a NAUIC training or some sort of child development training, and that's what that covers: their hotel, their airfare, their registration fees, their CPR training, subscriptions to things that are pertinent to their field. Yeah. So.
I see you about $100,000 between the federal food program and grant income for revenue. Would either of those be impacted by current funding freezes in the federal government?
Yes. The federal food, it's CACFP is the acronym. Basically, for income eligible families, they provide meal reimbursements to Hilltop for us providing them free meals, because we don't charge anything on top of our fees for the meals. So if you meet the income requirements of the CACFP, you get that Hilltop gets a reimbursement for the cost of those meals. And no one really knows right now. So yes, but that is definitely one of the federal programs that could have an income freeze for sure. Anything else before I move on? Yeah.
Just what exactly does other income refer to?
Other income, it's like forfeited security deposits. If a family, we require 21 days notice for a family to leave. So we have time to fill that spot and, get another kid in there and get their paperwork completed. So if a family just says, hey, I'm not coming tomorrow, I'm out, they don't get their $350 deposit back. Other income could be, we had one year where someone T-boned one of our vans. Everyone was okay. There were kids in the vans and everything. And we got about a $30,000 insurance payout. That would go into the other income. It's usually very minimal every year, but some years things come up and we get an insurance payout or some back pay or something like that. So this basically just kind of shows the allocation of the student senate fees. They used to be broken down into like certain sections. Now it's just one fee, but we used to have a fee for operations. We used to have a fee for scholarships, and we used to have a fee for facility and maintenance. So we still pretty much use it like this, but you can see that we spend about $675,000 paying KU students as teachers' aides or teachers' assistants, or if they get up there, part-time assistant teachers. And the fees we collect from Student Senate, the amount that we allocate is about $79,000. The scholarship fee, we call it a scholarship. It's more like a discount. It was sort of how I was explaining earlier about how the students get a discounted fee. That cost, I'd say this number is outdated. Probably, I'd say we're probably closer to 260 than we are 160 under that KU student scholarship fee. That's the reduced rate that qualifying KU students get. And then maintenance, that's just basic facility maintenance and things like that. We don't, the new building's complete. We don't plan on having any major maintenance projects in the future, so hopefully that stays low. But that's what we're spending this money on. And the big part I know for you guys is the KU students, so that being able to pay the part-time hourlies, the KU students who are interested in this field, and even if you're not interested in this field, we still get some that just need a job. But a majority of them are interested in childhood development. That allows us to give them a decent rate and be competitive with other organizations on campus. So with all that, that's pretty much it. We're not asking for an increase in fees. We're just hoping to stay flat this year and keep getting our 370. And that at this point will just, help us hire more students, afford to give discounts to student families who have kids that need to attend Hilltop. So we're just trying to keep things flat this year. Any questions or anything? Yeah.
So back on the slide where you had listed out the rates for students and is there a reason why there is no discount for infant care on that?
Infant care, we just started that this year. Infant care is very expensive. You have to have, they have ratios in the classroom. You have a certain amount of adults that have to be in a room with the children. The infant rate is really high. We have to have several people in the building or in that particular room. It's just, we've never really wanted to dabble in infant care, and a lot of child care facilities in Lawrence don't, because it's very difficult and it's very costly just for the staffing aspect of it. And this is our first year doing it, so it is possible that once, you know, we get more comfortable, more familiar with it, that there could be a student discount for infants.
And then a follow-up question on that. So how long is a child categorized in that infant care before they switch to toddler? Because that's about a $700 price difference.
Yeah,
Between...
toddlers they have to be a 1 year old by August 1st of that beginning school year. But the toddlers move rooms a lot more. Like if at our main location, like with toddlers through preschool and pre-K, you're in that room for the full year.
Mhm.
Toddlers, once they start walking, or infants, once they start walking, they have to go to another room because they're not licensed to be in a room with non-walking children. And this is not my expertise. I'm the finance guy. But I just know that it takes a lot more staff to take care of infants. And at that, I think there is another fee level in between infant and toddler that is $1,100. So like once they're up and walking, and it just depends per kid, like it depends on the kid. It'll drop about $300, and that could be 3 months. That, you know, depending on when they start. Or
And out of curiosity, how comparable is the infant care to other providers in Lawrence that also provide infant care?
we are on the higher end. We're definitely competitive. We're not the highest, and we provide currently. Last I saw, we have the most infant spots of any childcare facility in Lawrence. But I know our rates are competitive. They're on the higher end, but we are not the highest. Yeah.
I'll just stand up. This is less a question and more just a statement. So I'm in the graduate school program. I'm a PhD student in accounting specifically. When I started at KU, I had one child, and now I have two, and they're both toddlers. If you're ever lucky enough to be in an MBA program or a PhD student, your stipend for working and being an RA is very inconsequential. Virtually nothing, right? And for me, the only way I can complete my PhD and have children is to take advantage of this student discount. So, like for instance, like this $747 for two toddlers is easily 1/3 of the price you would pay in Kansas City for any sort of private market childcare facility. The infant care, I was paying close to $2,000 when I lived per kid in Kansas City for childcare. Like that's an entire income for most people most of the time. So this, just to say, like every single person I walk into and meet at Hilltop is often our students, and they're exceptional, and I run into them on campus and I know their names and I say hello. This is an exceptional opportunity for those kids, students, whoever, to get this level of care. Wonderful group. If we had had the opportunity to send our kids there as infants, we would have definitely done it. Not to say I'm like this huge advocate, but I do feel passionate about Hilltop. It's been, my kids love it there. I know there's a ton of faculty throughout KU that continue to send their kids there. So long-winded way of saying, I think that you may not be in a position to have children, but there might be someone amongst you that is in that spot, and you'll be glad to have this as an opportunity, especially if you're moving here, you're an out-of-state person trying to complete a PhD or a grad program, whatever it might be. There's not a lot of grad folks in this room all the time, so I just want to say I would pay this 15 times in that rate, so go for it. So if you have a question,
Good to hear. Yeah.
It's relevant.
I'm also happy to answer Hilltop's questions because I'm also a Hilltop parent. I pay the full rate, and I should pay the full rate as a staff member, but most of the students in my daughter's class
teacher. She's a full-time teacher, full-time professional, but she has a morning teacher and an afternoon teacher that are with her full-time teacher, and both of those are the same person every day, and they're CU students as well. And know all the kids and know their names. I'm happy to answer any more detailed questions as well. She was somewhere else before we were Hilltop. Her infant care is new to Hilltop. I can tell you that Hilltop's infant care is the best. So I was known by a lot of them. And the price is less than what we were paying for infant care.
And we have discussed a student discount for infant care. It's our first year doing it. We're still trying to figure it out and know how to staff it. And this is just what I would anticipate. I would anticipate in the next few years that there would be a discount for infants of KU student families.
Do you have any more questions? If not, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. That was my thought process. Because, yeah.
Right. But it definitely different parts like it's like incremental. But it doesn't mean everything residual stuff.
Thank you so much for coming to present.
Yeah.
One of my roommates worked at Hilltop for a couple of years. It's her favorite thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Jane Miller. She worked there like 2 years ago, and then her schedule changed, so she wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
But she always talks about it.
Yeah.
Every year when I tell her that you guys are going to present, she's like, man, that's the one
Yeah.
I want to see.
I love it. I've been there since 2015. My kid went from toddler
Uh-huh.
to school kid. Yeah, I love it. It's a great place. It's very
That's
cool.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Every day.
I learned a lot.
You don't have the presentation. Oh, it's like. So you think, or not that you be here at 45. You think I'm going to?
You can
Not like.
if you need
Driving to the day, not the worst, that's about how much I grow. Yeah. I don't know if I grew up in my life. I know, I get that from. Like, give them a specific dollar amount. Make an honest statement. The overall budget, yeah. It's like a million. Include blocking. Yeah.
We'll give everybody like 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and stuff. Thank you so much for coming early.
I'm literally just hanging out next door, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you keep your head in there. We're hoping to do a lunch.
I just know that this is the first time I've been metrics and like numbers, so it's like I know what you're gonna ask me about.
Say like the number of more you can use or sort of. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 at least. So 5, how many? 6. Yeah. No, that's what I was. Yeah, I shared.
I just didn't know if you had it out.
No, I just have fun though. Sure. I need to add a provision for multiple preference election. Among other things I need to add, the name for, Thank you.
This is the only one I've actually
I need to. Sure, thank you.
My professor, I'm just like, oh, you guys are like that as well. But, and so,
I'll probably should.
I got like a water partner.
My killer. No, I'm kind of embarrassed. No, you sing. No. I'll sing. You sing and then I'll sing. Okay. What should I sing? Ooh. What do you want me to sing? Wait, what's that one song? No. Oh, I'll tell you what I want, what I really want. I wanna. Okay. This right here. So tell me what you want, what you really want.
I'm okay.
Did you just say? I'm like a bird.
When do I need?
Should I do it? No, stop. Ethan, come here.
Got me like ow.
No, I'm not a rapper.
What's his name? No, who's the dude? Who's the dude that you met?
I went to.
I'm tired of being played like a violin.
I kind of killed. Sean, how'd you feel about
Back when I was about to go to the.
You want me to do it again? I'll just do it out.
It's good,
Love on the brain. Take me to Jazz House. Let me do karaoke. It's just that on movie. It's in the national anthem.
When are you going to Jazz House?
I don't know. Should we go to Jazz House after this? I'm also meeting with the basketball. That's kind of chill. That's kind of like a chill.
That a lot also just
We can
because
see
there
this.
was like a big.
Hey, Janae, how do you feel about Lewis and Jazz House? I'm so down. Okay. No. Then we're coworkers.
I love having a job that's like.
Yeah. I don't want.
Tired of being played like a violin.
This past weekend, and then
What do it
boys who are not here. I was talking shit on those guys anyway.
What? Singing.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, they're quite prominent members. I don't know. What do you want to sing? What do you want me to sing? With my beautiful voice. With my beautiful voice.
No, you're a little ahead of yourself.
Spade. Why do good girls like bad guys? I know that song. I used to be emo. I used to be emo. No, I did. Yes. Before the race cars. Not you taking my saucy nugs, just casually. Just casually taking one of my 6 saucy nugs. Impeach. Impeach. Wait, do you want to hear my emo song? Do you want to hear my emo song?
This question for a really long time.
I don't even know how to say it.
Well, I'm Ivana right now, so yeah.
Are we serious?
I have actually. So why do good girls like bad guys? Yeah. Here, you go. Come on. I was
She can't sing. She has to look. Sing. Everybody pause.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
No, it was Ivana yesterday.
Wrong person. Shoot. Ivana, but she's okay. Well, I guess. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Okay. Yeah, I am Ivana right now.
Oh, yeah.
We have people coming out. Yeah.
Ethan, do you want to sing?
Sing us a little song.
Shady.
Yeah, we'll
All right, if everybody could take their seats, we're going to get started on counseling and psychological services a little early. And then there's a clicker if you want to use it. It's a little finicky, but it mostly works.
I was singing from all the way over there, and you couldn't hear me.
All right, I will admit I am resisting really hard, strong dad joke vibes about taking your seats, and please not taking them, but sitting in them would not be a bad idea. We need the chairs in the room, so please don't take them. I know, I told you I can't resist it. The pull is strong for me. So how about that start? That's fun, isn't it? All right, I am Chris, if we've not met. Chris Corbett, he, him are my pronouns. I am the director of CAPS, and I want to talk to you a little bit about CAPS. I'd be happy to talk to you more broadly about any sort of mental health stuff, but I know I want to honor the time that we have together, and I think we're going to be hanging out tomorrow night, right? If you haven't looked at your agenda for the meeting yet, early preview, we'll be hanging out tomorrow night as well. All right, and I just want to start with a general thank you. You all do amazing work here on campus. It's really critical work. You have for a long time been so supportive of CAPS and mental health here at KU, and I just am genuinely appreciative of that. I've been here for a year and a half. I came here from another university, and one of the big reasons that I came here is I heard how supportive the students were of our department and of campus, and I can tell you that any expectations that I had have been exceeded. And so I just really want to offer my continued appreciation to you all in the work that you do. I'm completely not trying to butter you up. It's genuine, I promise. Hopefully you got a sticker from our department. If anyone didn't get one, I put them in the back there as well. The goal tonight is to tell you a little bit about CAPS. If you're not familiar with CAPS, I also want to kind of give you a sense of where we've been, because we've been around for a little while now, but where we are now, we've made some adjustments over the last couple of years, and some of that's happened before I got here, since I've been here, and as we're moving forward. I just want to kind of tell you a little bit of the story of CAPS and why I think that's relevant for our conversation. And then, of course, we'll talk about where we're going, how that relates to money, all of those things that are kind of another relevant piece of our conversation. And my presentation style tries to be kind of as mellow and loose as possible. And so if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. But if you'd rather just shout it out, hey, Guy, if you don't remember my name, Chris, then I answer to that too. Cool? All right. So we worked really hard to reestablish our vision, our mission, and our values in the last couple of years. And so we are really excited by this. We feel like it's a really great reflection of what's happening both within our department, but more broadly across campus. It fits in really perfectly with our Rise, Jayhawks Rise values, and then also within student affairs. And so it's really intentional for us to be both connected within why we do the work that we do, but that also being attached to broader campus, right? In student affairs, we talk about making learning possible. And then we're talking about building healthy and vibrant communities across campus and all the various ways there as well. So Helping Jayhawks Soar is kind of our larger vision. When we think about what that means for us from a mission statement, we're focusing specifically on mental health and well-being. Those things can operate in isolation, but they're also very much connected together. And then when we think about 5 things that we thought were particularly important to us and we wanted to be reflected in all the work that we do, that's authenticity, belonging, compassion, dignity, and hope. Of course, that's not all the things, but those are the things that when we got our group together, those are the things that stood out for us. I don't know if you've ever done one of these activities, but it can be fun. If you put a bunch of mental health providers in a room, they care very much about words and the slight difference in what they might mean. And so it was a bit of an exercise to get to our final conclusion, but we're really happy with where we've got. Currently, we have 19 clinicians, and so that's psychologists, social workers, licensed professional counselors, and 3 of those are new in the sense that we're hiring for them right now. We're going to have interviews on campus for the next 2 weeks to fill those 3 positions, and so we're really excited about that. That's reflective of the fact that we've been able to grow in the last couple of years. In large part, a lot is attached to your continued support. We hired 3 new clinicians last year as well. And so that means in the last 2 years, we're going to have 6 new clinicians. We have 2 psychiatrists who work really closely providing medication support for our students. That's really important because when you look at some recent surveys that we have just from this last year, we know that our students here at KU, when compared to other students around the country, use prescribed medications at a little bit higher percentage than your average college student. So it's really important that we maintain and provide those services. Training and working with students is also a really important thing with us. And so we have training programs. We have training programs for both master's and doctoral level students. That means our doctoral psychology interns go through a matching process, which if you're connected to the medical world, you know that's something that a medical resident goes through. It's the exact same process that we have to get our psychology interns. It's highly competitive, but that's something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later when we come back to any requests for funding. And then we also have opportunities for KU grad students. And so students that are in the master's level, we have 3 positions for those. And then we have expanded that this coming year. We're anticipating having 2 more, specifically for our social welfare grad students. And then also we have care services. So care services is part of the umbrella of CAPS, but it is also a separate service within the CAPS umbrella. They provide services for individuals that have any experiences with interpersonal violence or sexual violence or things like that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about that in a minute. And then we have 2 support staff who are the primary face, for lack of a better way to say it, of CAPS. So if someone calls into CAPS, they come into CAPS, they physically come in. Then Sandy and Jennifer are there. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet them at some point, but they are absolutely delightful. They are just as cheerful on the phone as they are in person. That's not always the easiest thing to do. And I think probably of all the people in the office, they're the people that are genuinely most passionate about working with students. And I just have so much appreciation and respect for the work that they do. So that is all of our professional staff. It's also really important for us whenever we can to create opportunities for students on campus. We also know that students very often will talk to their peers first, right? Second most common is family or a professor. And then generally we're in there in the third or fourth range as far as those numbers go. We also know that students like to have a job. They like to get paid. They like to get really good experience that's relevant for their resume as they're thinking about future employment. And we have more and more students that really like to talk about mental health and well-being. And so we have 10 Hope at CAP students that we're going to be talking a little bit more about in a minute, but we employ those and they work year-round for us as well. If you are of the super observant variety, when you came in today for your meeting, you might have noticed that just outside these doors on the left is a new space that is specifically for CAPS and our Hope at CAPS peers. And so we are in the process of building out a really cool space there that's going to be available for students to hang out in, to maybe study in, to have some groups and workshops related to mental health. And so you can look for a more broad announcement about that here in the next week for open house on that. But that's something that's reflection of an incredible partnership that we have with our friends here in the union. And we'll be talking about those things in a minute. All right, brief overview if you're not familiar. CAP started in 1991, which I was alive then. Maybe most of you weren't. That just makes me heading in the direction of being old. I'm not there yet. I'm not going to claim it. But sometimes I do wake up and my joints hurt. All right. CAPS is more than just therapy. CAPS is a range of things. Therapy is one of the primary things that we do, but it's absolutely not the only thing that we do exclusively. So we also do a lot of programming around health education and prevention. Often one of the best ways to help our mental health is to do something in advance of experiencing that thing attached to our mental health. And so one thing I like to do is to watch fun things on the internet and hang out with my animals, as an example. But other people do lots of other things too. We also, it's really important for us to promote relationship and opportunities to connect to community. And so we try to do anything that we can to create a possibility and an option for that. While we work exclusively with students, we don't provide services to faculty or staff. Faculty and staff work really closely with students. And so it's also really important for us to be a source of consultation and support and potentially advice giving. We often are hearing from faculty, hey, my student just said that they have anxiety. I don't know what to do with that, right? How can I help that student, right? And so we're going to talk a faculty member or a GA or anyone on campus through that if they have questions about that, for example. So, of course, we have counseling services. That, when you hear about that, think about your traditional therapy where they meet with one clinician one-on-one. They meet with that same person next time, right? Similar to what you'd see if someone had traditional therapy services off campus. We do also do a lot of urgent and same-day appointments. We'll talk more about that in a little bit because that's an increasing area of emphasis for us. I've mentioned psychiatry and training. I kind of got a little out ahead of myself earlier, but then we're also leaning more into being out on campus and being part of the community a lot more. We're going to talk here in a little bit about a thing called JED, Healthy Campus, and that's an example where we're leading a campus initiative related to health and well-being. And then lastly, if you haven't heard of TELUS Health, TELUS Health is a partnership that we have with a company that works off campus, and they provide services for students that's free, and it can be a phone call or a chat. It's also an app and a website where students can go and look up information about things related to mental health, thinking about things like sleep, nutrition, to more typical things like depression, anxiety, relationship, that kind of stuff. Questions about anything at this point? No? All right, cool. TELUS works on a contract, right? And so that means that every once in a while when that contract is ending, we will review the options that we have. We will review how everything has worked with TELUS, and we look to see if that's what we want to continue doing, or if we might adjust that to something that's more relevant for the needs that we might have now. And that's a lot of that is based on student feedback, right? We, thanks to your support, the Student Senate was able to reestablish the Advisory Council for Mental Health. And so I've been able to meet with those folks once this year and planning to follow up with them on a regular basis. I also use our Hope at CAPS group as another consult to say, tell me about what's going on for students, how help keep me in tune. Because as much as I want to hang on to what my life experience was when I was in undergrad and grad school, things have shifted a little bit since then. Taylor Swift, for example, didn't exist, among other things. And so a lot has changed. In the case of Taylor Swift, I guess things have changed for the better. But that's just what I sing with my daughter, so that's a different conversation. All right, so I mentioned this earlier. We have 10 students that work part-time. They provide programming on campus. They will do one-on-ones, listening sessions with students. They are a significant part of our programming here. We have a really cool program event that we're planning for the spring, which is not quite yet, even though the weather the last couple of days made us think maybe it was here. And that's going to be in April, called Fresh Check Day. And so that's going to be a campus-wide event where we're going to have booths out on campus. We're going to be looking for both departments here at KU and student organizations to be part of that. And so it might be a perfect opportunity for Student Senate to be part of that event if that's something that you would like to be part of. We can talk about that later. The piece I already mentioned, but I want to just emphasize again, is we hear from students, one of the reasons that they don't necessarily make it in for services is time, right? The top three are time, money, and location. So we are trying to address all of those things in the ways that we can. This new community space right out here in the hallway is an example of that because it allows us to be more central in a number of ways to where students are. My understanding is that approximately 1 million people come through the doors of this building every year. We want to be here for that, right? In case something's going on related to mental health, we want to be here for that to support or provide programming and education. And so I'm really thankful that we're going to be able to do that now. Another thing is that walk-ins is only open from 8 to 5. My guess is that sometimes you're doing things after 5 o'clock. And it's not just studying. And sometimes it would happen in this building. This building is open past 5. And so that gives us an option to also be available past 5 o'clock. I could tell you lots more reasons, but no one wants to hear them right now. So care services, I mentioned this earlier, but our two amazing staff, Melissa and Cassie, provide services to any students impacted by interpersonal violence. All these services are free, they're confidential, and they do not have to report to any outside agency at KU or in the community. And so they are a really valuable resource for students. And they are covered almost exclusively by a function of the umbrella of CAPS. They are covered by the student fee. They also will help students navigate through difficult circumstances if they need to get out of current living circumstances that maybe aren't safe. If someone that caused them harm also caused harm to some of their stuff, like for example, a phone or a laptop, we have some funds that we can make available to them to help them kind of get back on the track, whether that would be academically or otherwise in life. All right, I mentioned TELUS earlier, but I just emphasize again, this is available 24/7. We went live with it in 2021, kind of turned out to be relatively in the middle of the pandemic that we had. There's multiple languages available through that. And again, it's free for any KU student. Technically, it's free for anyone that has a KU email address, but we know that it generally is the students that are using those services. One of the cool things about it is the fact that there's support available in so many languages. And so that is private and confidential. We don't know all the information that the students are when they're calling. If they choose not to be identified, then that's an option that they have. but we can get a sense sometimes of the various languages that they're provided services for. All right. So some of this information might be familiar, right? Our community partners last night attached to mental health spoke about what they do and what they see. And so you're going to probably see that there's some collaboration here that takes place. So they provide some support and some things that we do as well. Those function differently. For us, the number one thing that we see students for is anxiety. Based on this last semester, that was approximately 60% of the students that came in to see us. It was specific to anxiety. Often there's more than one thing, right? But based on what the students are reporting to us, that is the most common thing. Adjustment to a new environment is also something that's very common. Now, these numbers are also from fall, right? And so one of the things that you can anticipate is we're going to see more questions around adjustment in the fall, because that's when we have the most new students on campus, right? New undergrads, new grad students, even new transfers. Those are likely most often coming in the fall. And so you can expect that we see more questions about that in the fall. In the spring, we also see some adjustment stuff, though. It's adjustment in reverse. It's adjustment in I'm going home for the summer, I'm starting a new job, I'm graduating, I'm trying to get to grad school. What does that look like? And so it's adjustment kind of in the other direction, but we're there to provide support and options just the same. Here are a number of other options that we see as well. Anything from relationships to safety. And when I say safety, that's suicide, right? Suicide, if you don't know, is the number 2 most common reason for death for the age range 15 to 30, right? Number 1 is accidents, specifically car accidents. And so we like to think we have an opportunity to change the world in a number of ways, but particularly when we think about suicide. We really want someone to know that they have a safe place and they experience CAPS as a safe place. If they're thinking about suicide, or if they've thought about it in the past, or if at some point maybe they've even gone so far to make a plan or have attempted. For the students that come in to see us, about 33% of them indicate that they've thought about suicide in the last 2 weeks. Now, that is slightly lower than the national average, which is 35%, but we still would like to see that number lower. And so we work really hard with that, and on that, that's a priority for us, and I'll give you some examples of that a little bit later when we talk. So we ask every student that comes in the door about this. We think it's a really important thing to ask them about. It doesn't mean that we think that that's happening, but we also want to normalize it, right? It's a thought that a lot of people have had cross through their mind. It's not a big deal, right? It's okay. I think telling someone about that shows strength. It shows a lot of character. And so we want to create as much space and environment as we can for someone to talk about that, understanding that they do that where they would like to do that, where they feel safe and they feel like they can trust folks. I didn't say this earlier, but I want to, it's relevant probably in this point to emphasize that CAPS is confidential. So one of the things that we see is most often misunderstood is that if someone comes to CAPS, that people on campus will know that. And that is absolutely not the case. We are a secret bubble of privacy, for lack of a better way to say it. And if any information goes out of our department, with 3 legal exceptions, that is the decision of the student. And they have specifically told us what information is to be shared and who that information is to be shared with. And we take that so importantly that they have to sign paperwork that we keep a record of, and they can revoke that at any point. And if they don't, out of all due caution to respect their privacy, it automatically expires after 1 year. That way someone can't call later, 5 years down the road and get that information, assuming that they had that information before. All right, and then sleep is one of those other things that often happens. And so we do some conversations and some groups and some workshops specific to sleep. I'm sure you all get plenty of sleep, right? All right, Joke? I didn't when I was in school. I'll just say that. It took me about 20 years to figure out that sleep was an important thing. All right. Here are our current costs of services, and I'll explain what all these numbers mean in a minute, or right now. How about that? So Jayhawk check-in is our first-time appointment in CAPS. That is something programmatically that we implemented in the last year, and those are all drop-in. We find that the best time to talk to a student is when they're ready to talk. In the past, that's happened on a scheduled basis, which is also not a bad thing. But what we found is that there was more demand than there was availability. And so those appointments would get scheduled out in advance. And we found that after 2 weeks, those reschedules and cancellations and no-shows increased pretty significantly. And so in the last year and a half or so, we've adjusted our structure to create more opportunity for same-day drop-in appointments and ultimately made our first appointment all the function like that entirely. And so it eliminated cancellations, right? Because if you're not scheduling in advance and you're just going to come in when you're ready to come in and we're ready to see you, then that's proved to be really helpful. We also made it free. We did not want a student to not come in because cost, right? And so that was $15, which I know is not a lot. These days, it's about the cost of my preferred kind of coffee, but that is also $15. It goes a long way for ramen noodles, for example, and so that's a lot of meals that a person might have to pick as opposed to coming in for counseling. We also made all of our urgent and same-day appointments free. So in addition to those Jayhawk appointments, we provide a lot of urgent and same-day appointments. We also changed our philosophy on that. So there was a time in the past where a student here and many other places would have to prove that their reason for coming in was urgent. And that probably sounds kind of silly. Eventually, once we thought about it, we thought, that does sound kind of silly. And so we decided, why don't we just let the student decide if it's urgent or not? Why do we have to, if for some reason, try to filter that out? And so if a student comes to us and says, I need to talk to someone today, our response is going to be, okay, let's get you connected with somebody. And so we've, again, adjusted our structure to allow for more of that same day access. And you'll see that reflected in some numbers that we're going to look at here in a little bit. We also made all our groups and workshops free. Some students love groups. Some students, it's the last thing that they want to do. We want to encourage more students to do it because we find that once they do it, it's pretty cool. It's just a little intimidating to do it at first. And so in an effort to help with that, we've made those free. Currently, counseling appointments, which means those ongoing appointments, does cost $15, right? It's not a lot, like I said earlier. However, we know it's a reason that some students don't come in. I'll talk about that in a little bit more specifically, but that's X'd out because if all of our stars align, then that's something that's going to be different this next year. And that's where we're going to talk more about that. Psychiatry, that initial evaluation is currently $40 and any follow-up is $25. I'd love for that to be at no cost as well. That's a little bit of a heavier lift financially, and it's still significantly cheaper than what a person would pay off campus. All right, any thoughts or questions about that at all? You're so studious and attentive. We're paying attention to other things. Either way, we're doing it, right? All right, so a couple of review items. In the last 2 years approximately, we increased same-day access, reducing barriers as much as possible related to time. We updated our service model to provide services to a broader range of needs. And part of this was when I got to campus a year and a half ago, I went around and talked to as many students as I could. I talked to as many staff and faculty on campus as I could and said, tell me what you know about CAPS. Tell me what you've heard about CAPS, because I want to know what that is. Help teach me, so as we move forward, we're moving forward together. And so a lot of the things that we looked at many of these were already in place, and some of them we've continued were related specifically to some of these things that people experienced, or in some cases people heard. What we hear isn't always accurate. And so sometimes it's also about figuring that out, right? Because I heard that CAPS had a really long wait list, right? What was interesting about that is that CAPS had never had a wait list, right? And so there was like, how do we figure this out? There's a disconnect that's happening between our students and our department. And so we've worked really closely on also improving our communication. I would say we're not where we want to be yet, but we're working really hard on that. We've also been able to expand positions, like I've mentioned. When we expanded those positions, we placed an emphasis in all the ways that we could appropriately, increasing representation within the staff. And so that means that we want our staff to reflect our students, right? And so we've been able to really do some cool things. I'm happy to say that in CAPS now, we're able to provide services in 4 different languages. And so that's Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and English. And my hope is that when there's opportunities that we could expand beyond that. With our connection with TELUS, we're able to also pull in additional supports and languages and things like that. All right, we talked about groups and workshops. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that again in a couple of minutes. The partnerships are ever expanding. We have an embedded clinician program that we're going to be launching here in the next couple of months that I'm going to be talking about. That would not happen without partnerships, right? We want to eliminate as much isolation and silos as we can and bring people together. And whether that's working with us or us working with them, we want to promote those possibilities as much as we can. And then the last piece is reflected in the stickers that I gave you, but we completely redid our branding. We renovated our space. If you had been there in the past prior to a year ago, it felt like a psychiatric hospital in the 1970s. That needed to go away, right? And so we worked really hard to update the space with some minus walls. We changed everything else. Paint, furniture, carpet. We're in the process of working with some artists to put some art in there. One day we're going to have this magical mural. It's just not everything happens as fast as I like it to sometimes. We've got to honor process. Got to do it the right way, not always the fastest way. But what we've seen and heard from students is that they love the new space. They love the new environment, which is awesome because that's the whole reason that we're here, right? So if you haven't been there and you want to come by next time, or when you're in the building, we also have a relaxation room. There's a massage chair in there, along with some other cool things. But guess what? You don't actually have to come down to walk-ins anymore. Right outside your door on the left, there's, in addition to couches and beanbag chairs and some cool shelves and meeting spaces, there's also 3 massage chairs. So come by, use them anytime that you'd like, whenever it's open. If you get out early tonight, the door's open. I'm happy to hang out with you if you want to use the massage chairs. I would just ask that you wait until I'm done presenting. All right. We're not stopping there, though. We're working on a number of things right now for this year. And so part of that is we work to increase our same-day access. I talked about how talking about suicide and suicide prevention is a really important thing for us. And so we've relaunched our efforts related to suicide prevention, and that's called #JayhawksTalk. We appointed a suicide prevention coordinator, among other things. We have built a web presence for this. And then we're also going around campus and training folks on how to talk about suicide or how to talk about difficult subjects. And so we have the ability to train faculty, staff, and students to talk about suicide or things related to suicide. It doesn't always have to be suicide. There's other things that are not easy to talk about too, right? Sometimes it's hard to talk about being a Denver Broncos fan when you live in Kansas City, but I'm not a Denver Broncos fan, to be clear. I'm just saying that other things are more difficult to talk about. And so it doesn't matter what it is. We want students, faculty, and staff to feel as comfortable as they can to talk about things that are not easy to talk about. We think that suicide is one of those things. All right. IACS is an acronym for the International Association of Counseling Services. That is a national accreditation agency. But that is another thing that we achieved this last year that really helps us speak to the fact that our counseling center is a top-notch, high-quality counseling center that meets all of the highest standards as it relates to college mental health. They also help give us some pointers on things to improve on and things to help with, right? And then the JED Healthy Campus Program is not an accreditation exactly, but it's a national model on college mental health, but it looks at the entire campus, right? And so we have a JED campus team that has representatives from 15 different areas on campus. We meet about once or twice a quarter. We did a student survey last spring, and then we are in the process of implementing a 4-year strategic plan specifically to mental health and well-being on campus. And then at the end of that 4 years, we're going to be able to conduct another assessment to see what impacts and changes that we've been able to make, right? So we are launching this more broadly here this end of this semester, beginning of next school year, as it relates to some specific programs and some other things on campus. What's really cool is a lot of the things that they're encouraging us to do are things that we already have in effort, in process, and so that's really fun. Our embedded clinicians program is an example of that, right? If you remember earlier, I said the 3 things that we often hear from students is most often stopping them is time, money, or location. So in the case of embedded clinicians, that fixes the location issue. So we are going out on campus into various places to be available for students to provide them services. So we are in the process of hiring 3 embedded clinicians. One is going to be located in housing area. One is going to be located right here in the Student Engagement Center. And the other one is going to be located, my brain just left my body. Where's the third one? On campus somewhere. I forgot. That's funny. Anyways, I'll remember in a minute. Why am I forgetting? No, I'll come back to it. I've talked about improved partnerships that we have with campus partners. And the last thing we did, it's not so exciting, but it's really logistically important, is that we improved our electronic record keeping system to allow that to be primarily important, easy to access, easy to use, and more available to students and clinicians. It's not the flashiest thing, right, as it relates to the work that we do, but it's also super, super important. It also allowed us to adjust some of our counseling resources so that we can make resources available for students. I remembered that third one. It's housing, right? All right. And it's here in the union. And then it's also in collaboration with the law school and social welfare. And so the goal is with time and with resources, and we believe that once people experience it, they're going to get excited about it as we are, that we'll be able to add embedded clinicians into other academic areas, right? This is a more common practice that's happening in universities now, and so we want to be able to provide those same options for our students. All right, mine is forgetting where those 3 people were going to go. Let's talk for a minute about numbers. This is a lot of numbers, so forgive me if there are too many numbers. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I love some numbers. I really love the pictures and the stories that they tell, though. So I wanted to go back 3 years and talk to you a little bit about what this means for us. So when we think about 22 to 23, 23 to 24, and then 24 to 25, 24 to 25 is obviously based on what's happened so far in 24. It does not include the rest of 25. I took some liberties to suggest what those numbers would be, assuming everything stays the same. All right, so we'll talk about that. All right, 22, 23, we worked with about 1,450 students
and it went up by approximately 20% that next year. Okay. Assuming all things stay the same, which they won't, because we won't see a brand new crop of students this year that we saw in the fall, we're still significantly up compared to where we were last year. So we've already seen 1,244 students this year. Compared to all of last year, we've already seen 60% of those students. So as you can anticipate, we expect to see more students than we saw last year. The number of appointments that were provided to them have increased between 7 to 8% every year for the last couple of years, right? That's important as we look at the kinds of appointments that we've provided. And so that's where I want to point out the same day and the individual specifically. This is when we told students that if you're in crisis, come in and see us. This is when we started saying to students, why don't you just come in when you're ready to come in? Don't worry about if it's a crisis or if it's not a crisis. Let's just get you in the door. Let's have a conversation and let's go from there. So what we discovered is that we tapped into a thing of, hey, students like to come in when they're ready to talk, rather than having to schedule an appointment and wait, because that number increased by over 600%. And that's kind of silly because that's a lot. But that tells us students really wanted to come in the same day. And so I'm thankful that we were listening to that feedback from students and that we were able to adjust our program to do that. Because of how we adjusted that program, you'll notice that our overall number for therapy did go down a little bit, right? But that's because we expanded availability in these other areas. And so overall, we still had an increase of the total number of appointments of 7.5%, right? That's what we want to see, especially when we're having the opportunity to add a couple of positions. We're able to increasingly add access. We've also had group therapy. I mentioned earlier that some students don't like groups. That's not unique to KU. This is a thing in college mental health. And so we worked really hard to think outside the box about how can we provide the support to students, how can we get the information to students, but maybe do it in a way for them that's less intimidating or it's easier to access, less complicated logistically, those kinds of things. And so what we've done this year, and we've already seen amazing results with that, is we turned off the projector.
It should just pop back up in a second.
Okay.
There we go.
Excellent. So what we've done is we've shifted resources from groups, right? So if you're tracking right here, our numbers for groups are not going in the direction that we want them to. We can't necessarily control that. We could have the best groups on campus, but if someone wants to come, then there's nothing we can do about that. But we do find that workshops, right, are less intimidating. There's no expectation about what you do. We're working really hard to bring them to the students, right? And we shifted those into outreach. And so you don't have to first come in for a clinical appointment. You just come when you want to come. You come to the things that are relevant for you. And so that's allowed us to grow our outreach program, right, from 63 outreach programs 2 years ago to, and that's for the entire year. We've already had 166 this year that's met with almost 4,000 students. So we gave a little bit here because this wasn't happening. We moved it here, and that's allowed us a lot more options to connect with students. We think that's a win, right? Just down this hallway that I've talked about so many times now, you're probably tired of hearing about it. That is another example of what that looks like. Our embedded clinician program that's going to be over here hanging out in the Student Engagement Center. It's going to be hanging out in Daisy Hill, and then over in Green Hall with our law students and social welfare are examples of where we are kind of adjusting, right, to the various ways that we think the students will benefit from services. This is a little bit of stats, so forgive me for this, but I wanted to show you a visual representation. I wanted to show you a visual why can't I say those two words? Visual representation. There we go. All right, man. Of what this means to you. I'll make sense of this if you don't look at bar graphs for fun in your free time. These are all the various things that we track when a student comes in to see us, right? Right here, depression, generalized anxiety, social anxiety. There's about 30 questions that we ask them every single time that they come in. That's because we want to know how they're feeling when they come in, and then we also want to know how they're doing over time, right? So this allows us to keep track of that. This compares when they came in to the last time that they saw us, and it also compares us to national averages. And so these national averages are hundreds of universities and hundreds of thousands of students. And so what that means is it's very robust from a statistical perspective. These numbers right here are what I want to point you to. This is depression, which says that we are a little bit above average compared to the national comparison, right? This is anxiety, social anxiety, academic distress. So you're tracking along here, right? If you're reading that quicker than I'm talking about it, you're noticing that, hey, we're Jayhawks, we're above average. Yeah, right? We like to be above average in most things. Yeah. We are above average as it relates to many things connected to mental health and the distress that we're feeling connected to those areas of mental health. But what also is really cool about this, and this is the reason that I'm showing this to you, we are also above average in the amount of change that a student reports experiencing when they come to CAP specifically, right? So when you look at these numbers right here, these are the numbers that our students report experiencing the amount of change, and this is the national comparison, right? So in almost all of these cases, I think with the exception of one, we are scoring significantly above average when we compare ourselves to other students and other universities. I love to brag about CAPS and the folks that work in CAPS, and this is, considering this is one of the most important things we do, this is a thing that I really love to talk about. And it doesn't seem like a big difference, but I can tell you that that's a big difference as it relates to the stats of that process. Okay. Other thing is on the bottom here, it talks about when a student comes in to see us, we always ask them about suicide. We always ask them about thoughts of hurting others. So for the students that come in to see us and they report any level of suicidal ideation, 70% of those indicate a significant decrease in those thoughts. And then as it relates to thought of hurting others, 78% of those report a significant decrease related to those thoughts of hurting others. Now, these are just thoughts. It doesn't mean that people are going out and doing these kinds of things, right? But it means that there's a small likelihood, an increased likelihood that could happen. And so we want to do everything that we can to help them with that. All right. That was a lot of information. That was a lot of numbers. Any questions about that at all? Anything stand out? Nope. All right. I thought maybe my accounting friend would have a question. Yes.
Well, I see eating concerns.
Yes.
I mean, if you can quickly touch on like how you guys are actively addressing that, if you guys are, just to kind of bring those numbers up. I guess alcohol use as well. But.
Yeah. So what this says right here is that when a person comes in to see us, this is where they start, this is where they end, right? This is where they start, this is where they end. And this is, compared to the national sample, this is where someone starts and ends. So we're doing significantly better. These are actually two of the scores where we're doing the best as it relates to students reporting the most positive change, right? And so for eating concerns, we actively ask students about their relationship with food, their relationship with exercise, their thoughts about their body, right? The way that I see myself, is that what I look like when I look in the mirror? You know, all of these different kinds of things. We ask every student about that when they come in to see us, both their current feelings about that and also their history about that. And then if that's something that they want to work on, then we talk to them about that. depending on their level of impact that they're reporting, we can work with them in the center. We can also help work with them to get attached to additional services related to potentially like a nutritionist or medical doctor to maybe get some labs checked or things like that. And then we have a number of students that we've also referred to local specialists in the community who work almost exclusively with any students that have kind of concerns relating to eating or body image. Yep. And that's to say, that's a really good example that we want to support every student we can in all the ways that we can, but we also can't be all things to all students, right? We don't specialize in all the things related to mental health, and we don't have an endless amount of services. And so there are some cases where we will help a student by helping them get connected to a resource off campus, right? We work really hard to maintain and develop additional relationships and connections to folks off campus so that whenever possible, if we need to refer a student in that direction, that we will do that. Great question. Any other questions at all? Yes.
What is the significance of like the red, yellow, white zones on the bar graph?
Great question. So this is each subscale, right? You're going to notice that those are slightly different. This is when this instrument, it's called the CCAPS, the College Counseling Assessment of Psychological Symptoms. When that was developed, these are the ranges of scores that elevate or that indicate the highest level of concern, right? So if you're in the white, you're considered most similar to the average person walking on the street, all right? That's not getting mental health support or not needing mental health support. If you're in the yellow, you are closer to the range of a student that's in a university setting and needing some mental health support, but it's not necessarily going to be considered highest need or also suggestive of a specific diagnosis, right? When you're in this pink area, that's the highest level of potential need and the greatest risk for being most similar to a mental health diagnosis, right? And so we love it, right? When there's any change, we really like to be above average. So we like to beat the averages that are across the sample. But from a functional life perspective, it's really wonderful whenever those scores can be here and they end up being lower than that. We can also track this on an individual case with every student, right? And so every student that comes in, they're going to fill this out. Their clinician is going to talk to them about what those things look like over time. So it's not going to look exactly like this. It's going to be a line graph, but it's going to talk them through, this is where you were when you came in to see us the first time. You know, this is your fourth appointment now, and this is what those numbers say now. And that's not the whole picture because numbers in no way can represent a person's full life experience, but it does paint a picture that gives us a better sense of kind of where they're coming from and how they're doing. Yeah, thanks for that. Any other questions about that specifically or anything else for that matter? Yes?
How stable are the improvements, like over the longitudinal studies, like over time?
Yeah, so this is based on the last semester, right? And this is compared to the last semester, but across the national comparison. What we find is that it's stable over time, right? And what helps with that is this functions as a result of us changing to that new electronic health record that I talked about. That allowed us to do these numbers and run these reports. The CCAPS itself as an instrument has been developed over many years. It's significantly researched and tested, and it's found to be just as valid and stable as many other measures that are used to measure mental health. And so the outcomes for that, because this is developed specifically to track things over time, we find that the scores are, as long as the person doesn't have other things that they end up experiencing, the results are very stable over time. Yeah.
And then regarding the population data,
Mhm.
Is there any like degree of precision over
the subgroups that constitute this data and like potential methodologies that could be used to best treat those subgroups? Because I know for SAPEC, they'll go to like specific groups that have been outlined at like higher risk for, committing something. In that same vein, are there subgroups that have been identified from this population that can then be used by CAPS to like maybe not like market, but like reach out to as like potential people that would be at a higher risk or best respond to a given treatment in this data?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I'm happy to say that yes, there are some ways that we can look at that. So one of the reasons that I love this work, specifically besides the fact that I'm a little bit of a nerd, is this connects us to a national research consortium, right? And so that's called the Center for Collegiate Mental Health. It was developed at Penn State in collaboration with some folks at the University of Michigan. There are hundreds of university counseling centers that take part in this research, and it covers hundreds of thousands of students. And so we're able to do some comparison within our own data set, but then we're also able to look at the research that's conducted at this national level with all of this data. They do some amazing work when it comes to looking at specific groups that are potentially at higher risk, right? So this last year, about 6 months ago, they put out an annual report, and in that they looked specifically at groups that are targeted for discrimination or bias or racism or other isms, and looked at what level of distress do they report compared to other student groups, and how does that change over time compared to other student groups. And probably no surprise to anyone, but for those that have experienced some kind of ism at some point in their life, particularly their college experience, they report higher rates of mental health concerns. And while they do experience change over time, that change in many cases is not as significant, right, as some of those other folks.
So have we identified at KU internally any specific groups, like whether they be a specific interest group, a sorority, or any other like cohort that we can go out for outreach specifically? Like let's say it's like depression or an eating disorder, like markers that can be identified to like get the help to people that need it the most that are not showing up to CAPS perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, we're all in the process of doing that as well. We don't have this data specifically for those groups, because this pertains specifically to the students that come into CAPS. But I talked earlier about the JED Healthy Campus, right? In that, we do a study and a survey that's called Healthy Minds. That is a local and a national survey of all student mental health. We also have the National College Health Association survey that goes out every 2 years. That asks questions of students that connects to a number of demographical variables and identities, majors, year in school, and we also ask them about their mental health experiences. And so we're able to identify, right, which areas of campus, whether it's major or gender or demographic area, right, is reporting these kinds of things, whether it's substance use or whether it's loneliness or anxiety, and then we're able to target some of our programming specifically toward those things. That's a little bit of what I talked about earlier, which is where we're working on that program that we're in the process of building and rolling out. It's specifically connected to that data that we have from the Healthy Mind study.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, absolutely. Any other questions about this at all? Yes.
I had a question about, as you mentioned earlier, like on an average, student who wanted to go and get a check-in and wanted to get regular service afterwards, how long would they even wait, and how would that compare to the national average and that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So because we moved all first-time appointments the same day, right, they don't have to wait at all, right? They're going to be able to see that same day immediately, and we're going to work with them to figure out where we go from there. If they're coming in at a time where we are really busy, that next appointment may not be immediately. It may be a couple of weeks from there, depending on kind of our demand, right? And depending on what time in the semester that they're coming in. If they're needing immediate care on an ongoing basis, we're going to schedule them an appointment, right? We're not going to say, thanks for coming in, have a good day. We're going to make sure that if we make a clinical, right, assessment that their needs are more immediate and are of higher concern, then we're going to fit them into our schedule, right? If their needs are not as significant, then they might have to wait a little bit, right? So we make those time decisions based on how much distress that they're experiencing, right? There are times where when it's really, really busy, then we do have a little bit of a wait, again, for follow-up appointments, not for same-day appointments. And so we'll talk to them about what that means. We'll talk to them about their other options, and whether that's on campus or whether that's TELUS or whether that's off campus, because a lot of students do have health insurance, and so in some cases they can access some supports off campus as well, right? But that's also where our accreditation that I talked about earlier, that helps us track some of those things because it gives us recommendations about how many staff we should have. And so we work really hard to make sure that we're at a minimum maintaining those levels or getting to those levels. The kind of reality, right, is that it's very unlikely that we're ever going to have enough clinicians to meet all the demand, right? And so we have to work really closely to make sure that we've got as much of a breadth of support and services available to students as we can. And so that's why we have the groups and the workshops, and we have Hope It Caps community space, and we have these apps and these other things that we want to make available to students. Because while we know that for the vast majority of them, the preference is to meet with someone in person, unless we win the lottery, the chances are not quite going to be there that we can provide individual therapy to every student that wants it, right? But that's where we're fortunate to have in our community a number of other options as it relates to that. And then that's also where, when we are meeting with a student, we're asking them about, what is your financial situation? Do you have access to a vehicle? You know, what are the other things that are going on in your life that's potentially going to create a barrier for you to access services? And if we have someone that has a whole lot of resources versus someone that doesn't have any resources, then we're going to help that person with a lot of resources most likely get connected to someone in the community. And the person that can't get off campus, we're going to work to get them services on campus. If and as resources improve, right, then we will tweak and adjust that accordingly. Yeah.
So regarding the backlog or wait times, what are those looking like? And then what has, is there any data on like degree or like quantification of number of cancellations since your on the day policy compared to now? Like what's that looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a student has to wait, our average, right, once we hit that wait, it averages out to be about 2 or 3 weeks to get started, right? They're going to have that first Jayhawk check-in, right? So that's going to happen the same day. Once they get assigned, that's where, if there's a wait, it averages about 2 to 3 weeks, right? That's not ideal, but if you look at other places in the community, you sometimes got 2 or 3 months. So we like to think that we're doing okay, even if it's not where we'd like to be. The other question I lost track of, what was the second question?
It was about like the backlog. So you answered that. And then
yes,
like, what's the cancellation rate looking like ever since you first like changed this policy? Like,
yes, thank you. So when all first appointments were scheduled, our cancellation rate was around 10%, right? And that's, or no-show specifically, sorry, no-show rate was about 10%. Once you got past 2 weeks, that no-show rate went up even more, right? And so not only is that students not getting seen, but it's also our schedule having an appointment that we don't see someone and we end up wasting the time, right? And so we could save time and also help students better. And so that's when we brought in the same day. And the wonderful thing about something is if you don't schedule in advance and you can't no-show for it, right? So our no-show rate for first-time appointments is 0.
And what is it for the 2 to 3 week second appointment?
Yeah, once appointments are established, our rate is, I was just looking at it the other day, it's about 5%.
Is that an improvement relative to prior to the first day policy
It's an
change.
improvement, and it's better than the national comparison.
Awesome. Thanks.
Again, I'd like to see it be as close to zero as possible, but life happens, right? And so there's going to be situations. Just the other day, I hit a pothole on the road, and I didn't make it to my next appointment. So that's going to happen for students as well. All right, we already talked about that. All right, so where are we at in time? I've totally lost track. Oh, I'm like blowing through the time.
I can clarify just one thing for
Sure.
everyone. 3 years ago, the wait times for people to get into CAPS was like about a month. So this is a massive improvement, guys. Just point of clarification.
And as a point of historical context, if I could go back maybe even a year before that.
Okay.
There was a point at which when they were full, they would just turn students away.
Yeah.
Right? And saying, sorry, we don't have appointments. And that's not a critique or a judgment on prior practices and process, because they did all the things that they did for very valid reasons. And so it's not any sort of judgment on that. But I just want you to track kind of how that's different for students now. Is we may not be able to provide every student ongoing services forever, but we are going to absolutely see every student that wants to be seen. We're going to see them at least once, right? And even if we ultimately refer a student off campus, because it's better for them to connect with a therapist they can see every day for the next year, we still provide crisis and same-day urgent services to those students as well. So we are never saying no to a student in that way. All right, so as we move forward, we want to continue to reduce costs for access. At the top of that goal is not charging for therapy. We know that for our students, we surveyed them in the spring of this last year that cost was the number one reason that they did not come back for services. And then we also know from this survey that cost was in the top 3 for reasons that they didn't come to therapy to begin with, right? So that means we've got 2 primary areas where we're connecting to students, and they've heard of us, but they're not coming in, and finances is the reason for that. Also, based on this survey data, we know that when we look at comparable institutions of our size, 96% of those universities are not charging any cost for their counseling services. I don't like to be above average in that way. I would like for us to also be able to say that we don't charge students for therapy services and be part of that 96%, right? And so one of the goals in this next year financially is part of our request to you all is to be able to adjust our funding enough that we'd be able to have all therapy services by the start of next school year be at no cost to students. We also want to expand our embedded clinician program. That's not something that's going to happen through student fees, but that is a significant area of importance for us. I just want you to know that that's on their radar as far as our strategic plan goes. Ideally, we'd have, if the academic areas want to fund it, then we'd probably have, in an ideal world, maybe 5 people on campus in various areas. Engineering, think about all the areas on campus, right, where we could have some students. That would be just really great. We want to continue and adapt our service model, making sure that we're providing the best kinds of services we can to as many students as possible. We're continuing to look at technology. I'm not of the belief that there's ever going to be AI that's going to replace therapy. Although there are some pretty good technologies out there. We know this from most recently when we even look at telehealth. We have telehealth services. We are happy to provide telehealth services to students. And at this point, we find that students are quite tired of cameras and screens. And particularly when they want to connect to a student, they want to connect to a therapist, they want to do that in person. That doesn't mean that all students want to. And there are specific reasons where a student would need to or want to connect via telehealth. So we will always have that option available. But last time I looked, about 95% of our students are wanting to meet with someone in person. So we're going to continue to provide that. But think about other ways that we might be able to supplement that support with technology. And then lastly, I'd love to see more groups and workshops. And that's, again, just going to keep saying it, out in the hallway there, whether it's a massage chair or something else. We know that that's the way to connect with students as well. If they want to come in there and talk about relationships, or they want to talk about stress or sleep, then we want to make that as easy as possible for them. Okay? So what that means is we are requesting an increase in our student fee. We are requesting a $6 increase as it relates to that. I know that that might sound like a substantial amount, but that is going to do primarily two things for us. It's going to allow us to make those therapy services free or at no cost to the students. And the other piece of that that's really important is we have 3 doctoral interns. I mentioned that earlier. That is a national program, and so it is nationally competitive, right? We currently pay them about $20,000 less than regional comparisons. That makes it, I mean, we're really cool, okay? But $20,000 less is a significant difference, right? And so we want to bring that up as much as we can to meet those averages. So that's 3. That would be 60,000 specifically dollars as it would relate to that. And then to cover the cost for therapy, we're looking at about $80,000 a year is what that amounts to in student fees. And so that increase of $6 would make both of those things possible. And I will say, if you're looking at the budget sheet, right, I don't know how much you dig into it, but I know that I provided a spreadsheet for you to look at. You'll see that some of those numbers don't necessarily look balanced, and that's because they're not, in full disclosure, they're not balanced, but that's why we're also asking for the $6 increase, is because we want to reduce the amount that we're potentially going to be spending into our reserve.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions?
We're at times we only have like 2 minutes.
Yeah, because I talked a lot.
So they started 20 minutes.
Oh, I
We
see.
have our next one.
Yeah, I talked a lot.
Can I ask a question? So we have about $10 total to give out during these proceedings.
Yep.
We've already been asked for a significant portion of that. What would happen to CAPS if we weren't able to increase your fee? And what would be like the minimum meaningful amount to allow you to still expand while we can provide resources to these other groups as well?
Yeah, it's a fair question and an important question, because I know that we're not the only folks that are asking. If we got no money, we would continue to charge for counseling services. We would not be able to increase the compensation for our interns, and we would spend into our reserves. The bare minimum for us to actually get to budget balance is actually a $12 increase, right? I'm not asking for that, right? That is not possible. That is not fair to the other folks, because this is a team effort, and that is something that we're going to have to solve through a combination of things, right? And so we're working really hard to do that. The $6 covers those two things that I've mentioned. If it was a portion of that, then we would just have to look at some things that we would do and some other things that we wouldn't do. That's what
Brendan, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I do.
Okay, Cam, did you have one?
Yeah, just like very quickly, you mentioned when you were talking about like the release of information from your clients. You mentioned that there were 3 legal exceptions that would allow you guys to do that without student consent. Would you mind just like quickly rattling off what those 3 are?
Yep, that's a legal subpoena that we're required by the court to do that. We can still potentially challenge that. There's saying that they're in an imminent threat to themselves or someone else. And then they're saying that they know that a child or an elderly person or otherwise a person that can't care for themselves is being abused.
Thank you.
Razak, you can ask your question quickly.
Yeah, can we call you day of deliberation if we need to?
Please.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep, I would welcome that. And I know that you have hard decisions to make. I just appreciate your support and honor everything that you've been doing, and whatever your decision is, I know it'll be the one that you need to do, and I will always honor that and trust that.
Keep the appointment costs, increase the salary for the postdoctoral interns. How much?
That's a difference of 60,000, so that's going to be somewhere in the range of $2 to $3.
$2 to $3. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Sure, of course, thank you.
Okay, we're going to try to get the next presentation started here in the next couple minutes. So if you have to run to the bathroom or anything, please do that quickly.
I'm so busy this week. It's like I'm running on like 3 hours.
No, it's okay. But can you drive me to 85? Would you mind? I really appreciate it.
Come here, Megan.
What?
Was he even here?
Yeah, he was. I let him leave before we started. One of them. He was like, Prasad said he'd be here at 45. I'm like, if you want to go, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm good. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. Bye.
Hi there.
Hi. Megan Stockfriend. I'm the chair
Oh,
of
hi, I'm
fee
Joe.
and finance. Nice to
Hardesty.
finally meet you.
Yeah, this
The-
is Kevin Wentworth.
Megan Stockfriend. Nice to meet you.
She is the e-review chair
Yes.
and also
Finance council,
chair?
yeah.
Yeah.
I get to
So
do
you're
all the money stuff. All right, there we go. We have a few people in the bathroom, but they should be back in a second. There we go.
How do you advance on this?
We have a clicker, so that. Oh, yep, that's working.
Okay.
So just right there.
Oh, awesome.
You can also use those
Okay.
arrows if that's easier.
Oh, in case you need to go back.
Yes, I should put on my glasses. I'm gonna see.
I was going to ask you, do you think I should mention I have a tremor? So that they don't think I'm nervous.
It's up to you.
I just wondered.
No, because in the donations to people who know you, I don't think you do.
It's something that when I was going to be deposed, they said they were going to tell people that. So.
All right, we have our next presentation of the night of legal services for students.
Are we ready? I think we're ready. I'm Joe Hardesty. I'm the director and managing attorney for legal services for students.
I am a KU graduate from undergrad and from KU Law School, and now I work at KU. And I will let my other colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isaiah. I'm a second-year student from Arlington, Texas, double majoring in accounting and finance, and I'm a tax intern for KU Legal Services for Students.
I'm Kevin Wycliffe. I'm one of the staff attorneys, undergrad KU, MBA at KU, and KU Law.
Great. Okay, we will get started. In the interest of time and also the fact that I know you guys can read, I won't read every slide. So we'll just be highlighting the slides. And I'm assuming you have access to our PowerPoint presentation. So great. So just to let you know, Legal Services for Students is near and dear to my heart. I have worked at the office for a long time, and I think it's a great program. So I'm just going to say that right off. I'm biased. Okay. To let you know, our office is actually the baby of Student Senate. There aren't that many programs that were created by Senate and are still around, but we are one of them. It was a student running for student body president who had the idea to start the service. He was elected, he got it started in 1979, which is a long time ago. I wasn't here then, but anyway, the program is basically by the students for the students. So it was something that students agreed to pay for themselves because they wanted it. Okay, our mission and goals, you can read that. Our mission is basically to prevent legal problems, and when legal problems arise, to help students with those. So who we are, real attorneys for real issues. You wouldn't believe how many people go, well, are you guys law students? What's your deal? You know, I'm like, no, we're real attorneys. In fact, the 4 attorneys at the office right now have 146 years of experience of practicing law. That is combined, yes. Yes. And it's a confidential professional service, just like any other law office. If you go to another law office off campus, it's confidential, private, same with our office.
I would add too a little bit about the attorneys on staff too. We are all very experienced. So it's not like we're all have specialties. Bill in our office has been a prosecutor for many years. Adams specializes in tax and immigration, and I worked in commercial transaction for 20 years. And so we are experienced just like people right out of law school. So you have experienced staff that's available to you.
So the other thing I was going to say, just to highlight that on that last slide, is we do not charge user fees. So that's something to let you know. Isaiah, I will let you talk about this next slide.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Just as I said before, I am a tax intern for Legal Services for Students. So the Legal Service Office, we do offer 2 types of internships. One being a tax intern, which is what I am. Usually our students are pursuing accounting or finance will usually take these roles. Another one is a legal intern. So students who attend KU Law can intern with our office as well. Through this internship, I've grown professionally in many ways. I have better time management skills. I'm able to grow professionally as well with communication and stuff like that. And due to my busy schedule, because just like you guys, I'm involved in a bunch of extracurriculars, getting an internship that kind of aligns with my schedule has been a little bit difficult. But with the office being right on campus, I'm able to complete my internship, still work my other part-time job as well, and still maintain a full-time student status. This internship has provided a bunch of open doors for me as well. Kevin and Joe are great mentors for me through my career. Even though I may not be going into law, their experience in tax has helped me pursue beyond in my career. And then even then the other interns, legal and both tax, we all grow together. We kind of feel like a family, have a community, because during our tax workshops that Joe will discuss about later on, we spend a lot of time together, and it's always like a really tight-knit family close to the end of the program.
Great. What we do, you can see criminal, landlord-tenant, taxes, immigration, consumer financial, employment, name change, and everything else, including notary service. We are basically like a general practice, small law office general practice. One of the things I wanted to point out about the the tax services we provide is our office is somewhat unique. There are legal services offices across the country. I think there's about 300 of them across the country at the bigger universities and colleges. And we're a member of the National Student Legal Services Organization. I'm the secretary of that group. And we were asked to present at our national conference in last summer. Adam Mansfield, one of the other attorneys, and I presented on creating and running a tax program for students. And we were asked for that because most of these other law offices do not provide tax service, but they want to. They want to be able to expand and grow as students, have that need. So it was nice to be featured at our conference and be able to teach the other law offices, the other attorneys, what we do and how successful it is.
One of the perceptions that we have to get over, I see it all the time when I do like the counters for orientation, is that people just come to us when they're in trouble. And that's not the case. As you see, we do the employment stuff. I review contracts. My background's in transactional work. We do POAs. I'm working a lot with the student organizations, the name changes, and the tax. And I would say with our international tax program, we may be the best attorneys in the state to handle that, because it's one of those things where it doesn't pay enough for anybody in a big firm to specialize in that. So we do that, which also reminds me a lot of the things that we cover are areas that fall through the cracks. Say, for example, you had a claim for $10,000. You're not getting an attorney to take that, because by the time you have the initial meetings, they talk to people, it's going to cost that. But that's a lot of money that's a lot of money, period. And so we handle several of those cases. And so I think we really have a good service that's available to the students. So we hope the students take advantage of it.
So you can see here what the different areas of law, the percentage of cases. One thing I did want to point out is one of the fastest growing areas is landlord tenant. We have a 37% increase since 2019. Most of those cases dealing with eviction and unsafe living conditions, which directly affect students' lives. So as you can imagine, where you go home and that's where you study, that's where you live, that's where you get away from everything. If your living situation is not good, that creates total havoc in your life. So even though we talk about these cases, it really affects students emotionally and in their personal lives, not just financially, but emotionally also. Anyway, we mentioned the tax, and then you can see what the other areas come. Okay, big number, right? Big number. That's $3 million, okay? I just want you to know, I was shocked at that when my assistant put that number together. I was like, wow, is that much? That's money that we've saved KU students. If they had gone to a private attorney and had to pay for that, or also this number includes amounts that we've been able to recover for students. It also includes part of the refunds that we are able to help students get from our tax service. So that is a big number, and I think it's really great. Let's see. Okay, so one of the things we need to talk about is 23 to 24. We saw less students in 24 than we did in 23. And part of the reason for that is we have one attorney who is going on phased retirement. So he was basically working only about half time in that year, and that resulted in fewer appointment slots. So that's why you'll see that. He is fully retiring in July of this year, and as I talk about our fee increase proposal, if we do not get a fee increase, we won't be able to replace him. So just to let you know, we don't want to continue seeing less we need to see more students. Okay, on this one, you can see presentations, workshops. I think this is important. We have a grant from the Internal Revenue Service, which I applied for, we applied for, and it's, oh my gosh, when you apply for something from the Internal Revenue Service, they are very picky, especially about money, right? So we are giving them information about how many students we see, how many people we help. And what they asked us to do was to look at how much federal tax refunds, not including state, but just federal tax refunds. And I had to put together a report for them last week. And that's what it turned out to be, $1.2 million in federal refund. I think that's important for you guys to know because that money goes back into students' pockets so they can use it for living expenses, tuition and fees, and it circulates back into the community. So it's a very unique and important service. Oh, did you want to mention, the internationals? Okay. Oh, the other thing I'd like to point out is, H&R Block can probably say the same thing, right? Or some other tax service can say the same thing. Hey, we got all these refunds for people. They charge people to do that. So we don't charge. So the students are getting that money without having to pay a fee. Right now, we'll have a student come in and say that a tax preparer, and I didn't mean to say H&R Block, just popped into my head, but they'll have a tax preparer do it. They may have paid $250 last year to have their taxes done. They're getting it for free with our office. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and to add to that, back to the point about the international students, a lot of times we've seen it when they've gone to the commercial tax preparers, and it's incorrect because they don't train them on international taxes, and it's totally different. It's way different, and we'll get students that come in that end up having to actually pay money because they went to those services. So in addition to this asking for fees, we'd ask for any international students, to please tell them to come to us first before they do their taxes.
Yeah. So you saw that last slide was just about notary service, how it's increased, especially this past year because of the presidential election. We did a lot of absentee ballots for students who live out of state. One of the questions that you asked us was regarding pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. So the things that we saw happen during the pandemic were increased financial issues, increased landlord-tenant issues, increased tax issues, increased scam fraud cases. The one thing we did see was, and this is nationally with our other legal services organizations, everybody saw somewhat of a decrease in criminal cases and a decrease in alcohol violations. I don't necessarily think that's because there was less alcohol going around. I think part of it is our state had a grant that they would work together with city, state, and county, and they would do much more enforcement. When the pandemic happened, there were less students around, and they did not want to interact with students and people and their enforcement. I think that grant went by the wayside, so we saw less enforcement, which is actually good for K students. So this decrease is not a bad thing. However, in just the last year, we have seen those cases start to go up again. One of the things that we did, which is, as everybody had to do, was learn how to use Zoom or some other virtual system. And we went to it immediately. Our clients love it because they don't have to come into the office. It's not like going to this scary place they've never been to an attorney before. And the other thing, it gives them an enhanced sense of privacy by doing it from your own bedroom or car or wherever they are. So virtual appointments started and they have continued. So obviously if a student wants to come in the office, they can come on in. But most students choose virtual appointments. Clio, that is a case management system that we use now. We started using it during the pandemic. In fact, October of 2019, I went to the Clio conference, and because we are considered an academic clinic, because we have interns working in our office, they agreed to give us the case management system for free. I had to cajole them a little, but they agreed to give it to us for free. That system allows us to have everything in this one system. We use less paper, so we're basically a paperless office now. And so we don't have actual paper files. We don't have actual manila folders that we used to. Everything is done in Clio. In addition, Clio has a client portal. So that's how we communicate with our clients, with the students. So we don't have to use email that is not a secure medium. The students just communicate with us through the Clio portal. It works great. And it's all completely confidential and contained.
Also, with Clio, and you'll probably hear this a lot, my pet project is the student organizations. I've been a student committee advisor for 3 years. I see that these organizations come in to get money, and they'll go to fundraise, and they can't because they don't have information to give a W-9. And I thought, what if they incorporate? So I had asked about it. That's some of the other stuff. They said, well, you'll incorporate them, but it falls off as the classes change because there's no continuity. One of the things that I've discovered that we can use Clio for is everybody can upload their documents, and so all they have to do is have an email for that organization. Then each year as they transition, all you have to have the email, and you'll have all the information and access to your documents through our office. So that's something I'm really working on. I'm working on rewriting a handbook for the student orgs, and we plan to incorporate Clio in that.
Yeah, that actually has been really great because over the years, you'll have a student org come in and their case may have been under some particular person's name, or the student will come in and say, we don't know what the bank account number is. Can you help us? So we'll be able to have all of that student org information for the student orgs who come to see us. We'll be able to keep that all in a secure place. So, okay, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. You can see here we were, and these are just appointment numbers, how it's gone down, then it went back up, and it's went down slightly. So, okay, case volume and workload. As I mentioned, the average rate is $292 an hour. The cheapest attorney in Lawrence, $172 an hour. The most expensive, $505. That's just, those are rough estimates. Most private attorneys handle a much smaller caseload than we do. We took on 880 new cases in 2024, and that's a lot to do. So just kind of shows what the attorneys are doing.
You know, I just thought of something too, because I've been in private practice, and one of the advantages we have too, when you're working in private practice, you're only going to spend so much time because you have to bill for it. We don't bill for it, so we can get whatever attention that we think the particular situation needs.
That's true. Okay, this is revenue versus expenses. So I just want to explain this slide real quick because I had to take a second look when I was looking at it. This side is our revenue, and this side over here is expenses. You'll be able to see, Kevin, go ahead and let's see that first. So these, whatever those are called, columns, those are the revenue, and then that is expenses. So just to make it clear, the expenses numbers are over here. So you can see we have kind of a shortfall here, and we were doing really great here on revenue. Then as this happened, part of it was we took a fee decrease in here. In addition, enrollment decreased. So that's why you'll see revenue drop. And then as student enrollment increased, revenue is increased. But expenses have increased drastically. So I don't think anything over the years has gone down in price. Everything goes up in price. This is just a slide showing expense trends and operating expenses. Yeah, are the red lines. Okay. Okay, our fee history. So we have not requested a fee increase since 2016. In FY21, our fee was flat, but then as you saw in those columns before, our fee was reduced in FY22, our fee was reduced in FY23, and 24, the fee held flat at that reduced amount. That's important for you to know. And then this past year, it was also decreased. So the total fee cut since 2020 is 8.4%. If our fee had stayed the same, that would result in about $90,000 today. So it would make a huge difference. I want to be clear on how the fees worked. Our fee wasn't cut because students said you're not doing a good job or whatever. During the pandemic, the Board of Regents made the students hold the fee flat. So when we had these hearings, there might be a group that came forward that said we really need a fee increase, like the unions, because they had less people on campus. So what your group did was take money from different groups. So they decreased some fees to give to others. So it's not that it was a fee decrease based on what we were doing. So we totally understand how that worked for those years. But it has, and what we were told to do was spend down our reserve account, which we have done. The only problem with that is, as if there is any kind of salary increase or any kind of increase in costs at all, our budget, our revenue has to pick those up. So when your savings account has been drawn down, you don't have anything to go to. So that's why we're in the situation we are now. Again, unlike some of the other fee groups, we don't charge user fees. We don't get insurance payments. We don't get, registration fees. And we do not receive any state funds like some of the other fee groups do receive state funds. They might be a state funded office and they get some funds from Senate. We are totally funded by Senate with the exception of that small IRS grant. That gives us about $30,000, which when you say you have a budget of, $700,000, $30,000 is not that much. I would like to point out that we were just notified on Sunday that the grant program that we get this money through, the IRS is one of those grants that is possibly going to be cut under the new presidential administration. So there's a good chance that whatever grant money we received over the years will end. And in fact, just our current grant year, there's a chance we won't be able to get that money for this year. So these are projections, just to let you know, Kevin, the red is FY26, which is this next year we're going for, and the pink is FY27. This zero, that's the most important line because that shows if we would break even. And this is in the negative. Above zero is in the positive. So we're having a... Okay, so now it magically appeared. So you can see with a 0% increase, I believe on the simulation, this is like 192,000 in the red, something like that. I don't have that memorized, but you can see the red numbers are on that zero line, those are deficits. And then when it goes above the line, those are positive numbers. Let's see, FY27. Clearly, FY27 is very bad if we don't have a fee increase. So, okay, consequences to decreased revenue. One of the things we would probably have to cut is our internship program. Our interns We hire about 10 in the spring semester to help with the tax workshops. They make between $13 and $16 an hour. And we would probably have to cut the internship program. We've already cut it to meet this year's budget. We've already cut it tremendously. So normally we would probably have 5 interns. Right now I just have Isaiah, who's like 5 interns, but I just have 1. And then you can see without the internship program, we would have to cut the tax workshops because I need actual human bodies there to help the students. We have the tax workshops, I'll just explain. It's a room in Summerfield about, well, it's much smaller than this, that has 30 computers. And so students register, they come in, they sit down at the computer, and our interns walk around and help people go through it and answer questions. So without the interns, there's no way we could do the workshops the way we do now. Anyway, we don't want to have an increased wait time. Currently, we can get people in really quickly. So that would probably cause a problem. And I don't even want to think about charging students for our service. That is just not in my brain. So, okay. This is something, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so at the end of the slides, we have some student testimonials for you guys if you want to read through those. Some of those testimonials are coming from clients that we've had, people who attended our workshops. And then one thing I want to emphasize by our tax workshops too is that while they do benefit the students of this campus, they also benefit students in KU Med and this year the Edwards campus as well. For our tax workshops, we do make the effort to travel out to KU Med as well to help out students through there. And this year we will be going to Edwards campus. Sorry, when English is hard. And also in the testimonials, you will find some testimonials from our former interns too about what the office has done for them and how it's impacted their lives as well.
And I hope you do take time to read the testimonials. I was actually shocked when we asked some of the clients for testimonials because our services aren't the kind where people are going to readily volunteer to give information. And it's confidential. So we had to ask them to do it. And I was flooded. I'm really overwhelmed with the people who came forward and wanted to give testimonials. And so I really appreciate you guys. Please take it.
Yeah, and as Isaiah mentioned, some are from former clients, some are from workshop participants, some are former interns, some were former student senators, and some former board members. So the LSS advisory board. And actually, I would like to recognize the LSS advisory board. If you would raise your hand if you're on the advisory board, that might help in case people have questions. So there's 4 of them here. Thank you. Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I won't read any of the testimonials. You can read those yourself. So
Thank you guys so much. What questions do we have? Brendan?
What is your ask? Like official ask? Because I saw multiple different numbers over there. What potential could ask, but like, what are you hoping to get out of this round of fee?
well, you guys have access to the simulation, right? That we turned in. So we gave 2 scenarios. One was a $5.10 and one was $4.25. So that kind of gives you an idea. You can see what that does as far as this fiscal year and what that does to next fiscal year. So obviously, if we don't get the fee increase of between those 2 numbers, things will change, and there's a good chance then we would come back next year and be asking also for a fee increase. So I think, yeah, and you can see, so, we're asking between 425 and 510, but you can see what the simulation does in that. So the minimum would be the 425.
Do you have any other questions, Simra? And then Danae?
Thank you for your presentation. I had a question on
like specifically related to the attorney that's retiring. And you guys said like, and obviously it's to the benefit of the students that they get professionals with, not to say tenured professionals, but you get what I mean, with the most amount of experience. Um, Imagine a scenario where you hired an attorney, say fresh out of KU Law. Does that significantly impact the services that you're able to provide? Do you get what I mean in terms of like the attorneys, how they charge? Usually it's based on experiences. Do you anticipate that to lessen the amount that you're going to be spending on a new attorney if you look for somebody with maybe less experience? If you could just expand on that.
Right. Good point. Obviously, somebody who has less experience, we would be paying less than somebody who has more experience. The thing about hiring a new attorney, which we have done in the past, they require a lot of help. So oftentimes that attorney is not able to hit the ground running as a new attorney. You need help and mentoring to be able to practice law. And I don't know if any of you are planning to go to law school, but in fact, just today, I got a survey from, I don't know if it was the ABA or the KBA, asking us, what do you think about people who are coming out of law school? Are they ready to practice law? Are they getting the practical skills they need in law school to be able to jump in? And I have to say the answer to that would be no. Because what they're learning in law school, they're learning the law, they're learning how to look at situations and apply the law to the situation. And it's not the same as meeting with a student one-on-one or meeting with a client one-on-one. And, yes, they learn issue spotting, but there's so much value to having some experience.
I can kind of speak to that too, because I actually worked for legal services right out of law school, and there's a huge learning curve. It's a little different back then because the office wasn't that old, but over the years they've gained a mountain of experience. And if you get a new attorney, well then it's kind of like shoots and ladders. You have to go back to build back that experience to have a professional team again.
I'm not sure if I missed this, but what is the kind of exact number percentage of students that utilize this service?
Let's see. I think I don't know what the percentage is, but I think on the one slide for 2023, it was 4224 students, and 2024, it was 3575 students. So, and it kind of broke it down on that one slide. My slides aren't numbered, so I can't tell you. Oh, wait, it's page 9, I think, on the presentation. The PowerPoint shows what the number of notary appointments, number of legal appointments, and number of people who attended tax workshops.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our services too, they're kind of like medical services, where it's not a consumption service, where it's not the number of people that you serve and use, because nobody knows when you're going to use that. It may be you next week that needs our services too. And so it's you can't do it like on a person, this much per person. It's more like some sort of an insurance. It's like an insurance policy that the university is giving their students.
We need to wrap up.
Just for clarification, it's like roughly 15%. This is for Kevin. How's the Innovation Park for those that don't know? Like Kevin's been helping students in the Innovation Park at KU, where students create their own companies and that type of stuff. How's that going over at KU LSS for students that want corporate advice?
I wish I had more from the Innovation Center. So I love doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Got very sophisticated contracts, negotiated bond work. I get part of the focus right now really is the student organizations, especially with the budget crunch this year, because I see them coming in, they're asking for money. Wow, they can raise their own money. I had a group that came in that wanted to clean the Allen Fieldhouse, but they can't do it unless they're a 501c3. So those are the ones I want to focus on first. But gosh, if you know anything from the innovation, please send them over.
Yeah. How many companies have you helped launch out from LSS with KU students, I guess.
I think I've incorporated 7.
Awesome.
3 that are pending for the YC3.
Yeah. And this is in the last year that we launched this program. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Why do you guys not do like I know you can't do cases for students that are trying to take a case against the university, which is understandable, but why do you not do student against student mediation or mitigation?
So student against student is something that we actually ran this by the Kansas Disciplinary Administrator's Office, who handles the ethics. Because all students pay for the service, it's like a prepaid legal plan, right? Just like Kevin mentioned, it's like insurance. And what they said is all of those people are your potential clients. So for you to advise one client against another is against the rules of ethics for attorneys, because you can only advise a client that's in their best interest. So if you had 2 people who are KU students, you couldn't do it in both people's best interest. I know the law school has a mediation clinic, and I know that the Ombuds office does some mediation too. So sometimes we'll work with both of those to do that, but student against student is one of those issues where we can't help either person. Sometimes a person will come to us and ask us for help. We always make sure that when we give them referrals, we tell them if the other student comes, we will do the same thing for them, give them referrals. We won't help either party. So, but we do, when we can't help somebody, we do try to give them places to go, referrals. So.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. Shay, can you end it? Okay, and then we'll.
Oh, yeah.
An outreach to gather all their questions first. And I
Hey,
can like do that outreach. I can gather the questions of other people let's just get their questions gathered and try and do that first. And that way we know what the questions are.
Yeah.
If we need to follow up
Yes.
on Friday, that can happen later, but
wave goodbye, Chris. Bye bye to people watching.
I guess I don't do the log out actually.